Fine. Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
Savior. Sweet. So yeah, so in general, that's what I recommend for paid work. So great. I see there's a couple of other recommendations. Links. Untied. Yeah. Nice. Untied, that's great. I'm a big fan of Untied. I did some work with Paul last year, and it's been great to see the growth of the company. So let's take a look at your blog. This is a good example of a fintech that requires quite a lot of education because it's a tax topic. When it comes to these tricky topics like tax, really, there's a lot of opportunity also to just educate people. It also depends on the country you're in. I know in the UK, a lot of publications and websites have kind of, they're using this opportunity to create a lot of content, also the government, which is good, of course. But I know, for example, in Australia, there is a lack of this kind of content. So it's also a good opportunity. So here we are for Untied. So we've got some blogs like 6% tax squeeze. Don't forget to do these 5 things before tax year end. Nice. Yeah, I think they're very focused on tax. I know that there's quite a bit of content on here, which is good. That's great. That means there's something to work with. I can also put them into my SEMrush and see what turns up. It seems like you're focusing on questions that people like some quite big questions that people have. So that's really good. I can just imagine that, someone who's filing their tax return is really stressed out and they're probably researching this kind of stuff. So that's really good. What else do we have? Oh, here we go. This is great. This is like a nice competitive one, right? So I'm imagining this was an article to compare QuickBooks and Xero and Sage to Untied. This is great. This is the kind of bottom of the funnel content that I was talking about. Maybe to make it a little bit easier, I might change the title to something like Xero versus QuickBooks versus Sage versus Free Agent, because people like to use the word versus to describe this kind of thing. And another little trick is to add your own title to the end, your own product to the end. So for example, Xero versus QuickBooks versus Untied. So sure, yeah, they're not looking for Untied, but if your name comes up, it helps with a bit of brand awareness. So it'd be interesting to see, Xero versus QuickBooks. What is it that people are really looking up? I know just for a fact that this is something that a lot of people are interested in because I've written this kind of content a lot. Xero versus QuickBooks. And this just shows you that it's quite specific to the keyword. And you want to really try and make it as specific to the keyword as possible. So here we're seeing, QuickBooks versus Xero, FreshBooks versus QuickBooks versus Xero. So this is what I'm talking about. The more specific, the better. So for this specific article, I might change the title to, what I said, add the verses in. And then also changing, you don't have to change this because it's a bit late now, but just for the future, you also want to make sure your URLs are quite succinct and just include the keywords that you're targeting. But in general, I know this is a great topic, a great article to be focusing on. And I love the meme. That's great. And then in terms of formatting, I think you're doing really well. It's easy to read, and I like the font size and all that. I'm just seeing that this is actually quite short. So I'm not quite sure, making the switch to Untied, I'm not quite sure if you're trying to do Xero versus QuickBooks, because if not, I don't know if you've answered. Okay, well, if you are trying to target Xero versus QuickBooks, then it would have to be probably quite longer than this. And we've written about this topic quite a lot, especially the Xero one. Actually, I can even go to the article. I think, what was it called again? Michelle, do you remember? It was one that you produced, I think. It was Xero versus MYOB. That's it.
MYOB. Okay.
So we actually wrote an article like this for a client, and I think it's on the first page also, or might be on the second page. It's for an Australian client. So obviously I'm in the UK. It's a different. Yeah, here we go. So what we did for this type of article, which is a typical bottom of the funnel. We did the Xero versus MYOB, and oh, I see Paul has answered. It's more for people ready to make the change. There's a link in that post to another blog about what you use. Okay, cool. So this is for a different purpose. Okay, my fault. So I'm guessing. Okay. So I think I know the one that you're talking about, Paul, and I remember you sending it to me, and I remember seeing it. It was really good. So I think I don't see it quite right now. But anyway, just for those who are interested, I know I've given this advice to Paul before, but for those who are interested, adding your own product to the end is a good tip. And then usually what we like to do is we first talk about our own product, and we try and keep it, like objective. And then we do the other ones. We also like to use tables. Tables are really good. People like that. Yeah, and we have put the cons here, but sometimes it's better to just stick to the features, because you obviously don't want to upset competitors, and you don't want to make them, do you want to be too subjective? So you can just focus on the features, and we've seen really good results with this kind of content. And then also adding the CTAs in the right place, that makes a big difference. So yeah, I'll just go to another Untitled blog. You said it's from the world. Recommend yourselves. Okay. Yeah. We don't always recommend ourselves. So here we go. This is Untitled's. Oh, cool. Alternative to Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, Untitled. Nice. This is great. Yeah, I love it. CTA right after the intro. That's great. And I would say here, this is just me being very like detail oriented, but just to make the paragraph a little bit like narrower, it's a little bit wide, just on a laptop. If it looks good on mobile, then maybe it's fine. The one thing I would say here also is, yeah, to make it a little bit longer, because you're doing Untitled versus Xero, etc. I think it's, with this kind of content, it's good to focus on each competitor and kind of list the features. And you can talk about the pros and cons of your own product, and maybe add a table as well. Here there is, I think these questions are great. They're like FAQs, but they're the kind of thing that I might add towards the end. Like we recommend, this is really good. I really like that. And it's good that you put tied at the beginning. But yeah, if possible, I would try and make it a little bit longer. Especially, I know this kind of keyword is, or this phrase is quite competitive. So the more comprehensive, probably the better. And, you can refer to our article if you're curious to see what we've written about. So as you can see, we focus on the product first, and then we talked about Xero. So these are the different features of Xero. We added in like screenshots and stuff, like what are the different things that Xero does. We added the pros, some of the cons. So you can see that it is quite long, quite detailed, quite comprehensive, and that's why we're able to rank. In Australia, we're ranking on the first page. But apart from that, I know you're like on the right track. Let's see if there's anything else. Is there any other article, Paul, that you'd like me to look over? Let me check another page. I'll review. Thanks, Paul. I'll review like another article, and then I'll get to some questions. The complete tax guide to selling on Etsy, conversation about doing tax. This is a really interesting one. I think it's a really good use case example. So, doing taxes as an Airbnb host. I'm not sure what the keywords are for this one, but I can just imagine that it's very specific. It's very probably, as we say, bottom of the funnel. So this is a great one for people who are Airbnb hosts and trying to understand their taxes. It's a really good example of a use case. And I like how you also go straight into the questions, because that's probably, they don't need to start with like definitions and stuff. So that's really good. I would say in general that maybe trying to make them a little bit longer, because in order to rank, often you need to be comprehensive. You don't want to add filler words and make it, too fluffy and add fluff, but it helps to make it longer and comprehensive. If you're ever not sure what to add, you can always, put something like taxes as an Airbnb host. And you can always look at the questions here on the people also ask. This is a really good place. I know you're probably already doing this, but for others who are wondering, what other questions are people asking? This is a good place to find information. And then also here, I'm in Scotland, so of course I've got these kind of things, but these are the kind of questions that people are asking. And it makes sense to include them to make it like a bit more comprehensive. Let's see what else there is on the blog. Oh, this is really cool. I know this is like really in demand, probably freelancers trying to understand taxes. I'll just take a look at this one. Yeah, I like the intro. I like how you're like straight to the point. That's really cool. This is the little call to action. That's great. Yeah, so in general, like you're answering all the questions, which is exactly like the right approach. The only thing I would say in general from the blogs that I'm looking at is to try and make them a little bit longer, a bit more comprehensive. And if you're unsure what to add in, then adding these phrases, looking at the people also ask section is a really good place to go. So yeah, anyway, thanks a lot for submitting your website. In general, I'm a fan of Untied, and I think you're doing great. So, and also taxes, I mean, you already know this, but it's a very good opportunity when the tax time comes around to create content for that specific like deadline, and to also do it in advance because things will take a while to rank and etc. So, but yeah, that's great. Awesome. I'm seeing a couple of questions in the chat. I'll just get to them.
Do you want to get to them now?
Yep, let's go ahead.
Okay, because there are a couple from Michelle,
Nice.
who asks, what do you mean when you say Google research, that you want to make content based on expertise and not Google research? Do you mean actual research on Google or the keywords?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So this is something that we have experience with because I used to be a writer, but basically, when you hire a writer and you ask them to write about a specific topic, they're probably not going to be experts on it, and that's totally fine unless you hire a specifically expert writer. Most times, most writers out there are generalists, and that just means that in order to write on the specific topic, they're going to have to do research, right? And in order to do that research, they will go to Google and basically read a lot of different articles and then kind of put that together into their own article. And I'm not saying there's anything totally wrong with that. It's just that if you want to position yourself as an expert, you really want to be able to add your own thoughts to it. You want to be able to add your own nuggets of information. Grow and Convert, who are another content marketing agency, they call it Google research paper, these articles. And this is, you can call it also, I don't know, cookie cutter SEO content. There's a lot of it. I mean, I'm just thinking of an example of something that I could look up to show you. But yeah, just in general, a lot of content out there is this kind of regurgitated Google content. And if you really, if you want to write advanced content, it doesn't work because your target markets, your heads of finance or whatever, they just won't be able to, they're just not going to be able to take that seriously and really understand what you're saying. So I don't know if that makes sense, Michelle. I hope that answers your question. And we just found that instead of doing this kind of Google research approach, talking to experts is a much better way of doing it. It is a little bit tricky because you need to convince or kind of, convince your sales team or your product team to be willing to do these interviews. But once you explain to them that content will actually help them, content will help them with the sales process, they usually understand, and then they're happy to do interviews. And in general, the content, the quality of the content when you're basing it on an interview with an expert is in general a lot higher. And it's also unique, right? It's your own voice, really. And it's just a good way of standing out. Someone asked me the other day, so many blogs, there's so many people blogging nowadays, so much content. How do you stand out? And the truth is, there is a lot of blog content, but it's mostly bad. As we saw in the research earlier, like half of fintech companies are not really creating content that hits the mark. So I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that, there's so many people blogging already, and focus more on, trying to create unique content, original content, and using the subject matter experts you've got on your team. If you've got someone on your team who knows a lot, that is absolute gold mine and so useful. And it's just about kind of, trying to get those insights from them. So yeah, so I hope that answers your question. What other questions should we cover?
There's one from Annie who asks, what is the best practice for doing content for a very niche category and you've exhausted all product related topics and you're ranking top on search? Would you then move to top of the funnel content?
Okay, well, I want to see the question because, okay.
Yeah.
What is the best practice for doing content? Yeah, so that's also a very good question. It is true for B2B fintech companies. In this case, we're talking about fintech, that you'll probably not find that many bottom of the funnel keywords because there's a limited amount where it's high ticket sometimes sales. Not many people are going to be researching, and that's okay. What we do then is there's some tricks that we have to look for other bottom of the funnel content. So that could be, as we said, putting in the alternatives keyword into phrases or the verses, or also just going back in, talking to maybe the sales team again and looking for more pain points or use cases. And then eventually, of course, middle of the funnel, top of the funnel, eventually you get there. We're not saying, never do this kind of content. It is very valuable. It will help. It'll help with branding. It'll help with traffic. It'll help with relevancy. Our argument is just make sure to do bottom as well. And top is also good. Also, if you're not really sure, sometimes you're not really sure if your target market, if they're researching this, if they're interested in it, and you're like, okay, let's just create this and see what happens. We've seen that also works. And top of the funnel also does generate conversions. It's just that we've seen in general, it's less than normal. So yeah, anyway, thanks for your question, Annie. Hope that answers your question.
Another question from Michelle again. What would be your best practices for educating your audience?
Educating your audience. Do you mean in blog format? Let me look for the question.
It's right after Annie's.
Okay, I'll just scroll up a little bit. Yeah, for educating your audience. I mean, best practices. I'm guessing this means like the topics. At the end of the day, it all comes down to understanding your audience, which is, I know, what everyone says in the marketing world, but we've really seen that, if you know that your target audience, for example, prefers videos, then it's you're probably better off investing in that. So it all comes down to what how your audience consumes content. So maybe they prefer videos, maybe they prefer social media. I was talking to a lady in Ghana who told me that in Ghana, people don't really use Google for information. They use it for entertainment. And they found that actually it works better to create content and then share it on WhatsApp communities and social media. And that all comes down to just, understanding where your audience is. And that's a good example of someone who maybe, it's not as worth investing into SEO and maybe worth more investing into communities. So understanding where your audience hangs out and then focusing on promoting your content in those places is really good. And then in terms of educating in an article, we try to focus on, the topics that we're certain that people are interested in. Also trying to always be to the point, quite important. People, we're not writing for entertainment. We're writing to inform, to sell. And people don't really like, generic intros or questions that are not very, or I don't know, intros that are not very, that are too long-winded, etc. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not really sure what education means. Graphs are also great, graphs and charts. This is especially true for B2B. If you're able to create charts and graphics, that's a huge pro. and people love that. So that's also a big one. If you're able to do that, that's really good. Great.
Another question, Amy wants to know if the research done for this webinar is going to be made available as well.
Yes, so I'm going to turn the research that we've done into a blog article, so everyone has access to it, and also you'll be able to find it in the recording and in the slides that we're sending afterwards.
Paul wants to know, do you find people type whole questions into Google or just a series of words? Does it matter?
Yeah, good question. A bit of both. You'd be surprised how many people start a search query with, can I do this? Or what happens when I do that? I don't think people are really thinking, it depends a bit who's a person who's researching, but you'd be surprised how many people use full phrases. And if you want your article to rank for several keywords, that's what it's useful to keep it to one. I would say to keep it to a few. It just depends a lot. I mean, let's take an example of one of Paul's blog articles. Yeah, a comprehensive guide to doing taxes. And then you go in here, actually it's here, right? People are probably, typing this entire thing. It's quite sure that they are. You can also see this for yourself here. These are probably questions that people are typing in themselves. And if Google is telling you these are common questions, then these are common questions. So these are always really interesting. I love digging into this. You can spend hours just going from one to another. And also if you keep clicking, they keep getting longer. So you'll never run out. But yeah, so people are typing in full phrases. We call these in the SEO world the long tail keywords. So you can create a piece of content that is just answering one question, but depending on what you want to do, it's also good to answer several questions. This is what Untitled has done here. They're answering several questions, almost like in an FAQ type process. And that's good because then you're able to answer all these questions and therefore rank for all these questions. And yeah, so a bit of both. That's my question. That's my answer. Are there any other questions?
I think we've exhausted all the questions. I don't think I've missed anything.
Sweet, awesome. Well, if no one else has any other questions, then I mean we can just finish this early. But yeah, as I said before, if you've got anything else that you want to cover, feel free to. We're going to send all the details in our follow-up email, and you can just respond to the email with all your questions. And also, if you want a review of your website, we're happy to do that. You can just respond to the follow-up email and we'll do that just to give you some insights. But in general, thanks a lot for attending our event live. Really appreciate it. Hope it was useful. And yeah, see you around in hopefully the Slack group or in LinkedIn, wherever it is. Thanks again, everyone. And
thanks, everyone.
Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.